Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back after the summer break for the first of all live streams. We'll be in this slot 9 o'clock on a Tuesday evening from now on, and we'll have all sorts of guests lined up. So I hope you've enjoyed your summer. Been somewhere that you enjoyed, or you've had a good relax if you've been at home. I've certainly had a good holiday. I'll tell a story about that a little bit later on. But we're certainly getting things geared up again with the Scottish Family Party, all sorts of ideas coming to fruition. It was interesting seeing that flag in our intro logo thing there. But we haven't actually had a Scottish Family Party flag so far, but we now have some on order. By some, I understand 200. I think we've got 200 flags on order, Scottish Family Party flags that look remarkably like the one that's simulated in the introduction to the live stream. So in the months to come, when we have outdoor events, which we've done increasingly, when we have outdoor events, we will feature our flags, and we've also got the pro-life flags as well. They're also getting on a pretty industrial scale. And I think they looked amazing. They're so striking, bold, they really make our presence felt. So we're looking forward to getting those in action. Right, what's going on? A little bit of news. I mean, one thing, quite an important development, is a Glasgow cabbie. You'll be aware that we've worked with Glasgow cabbie. He's a social media figure, activist in Glasgow. He's been campaigning on the sex education issue and sex survey issue very vigorously. Recently, we've worked with him on a number of events. But one thing he's done is raise money through crowdfunding for a billboard campaign. And he's raised £10,000 for a billboard campaign that would have a message basically saying, say no to the new sex education in Scotland. So that sounds a good message to me. Say no to the new sex education in Scotland. So the money's there. But the obstacle at the moment is billboard, at least one billboard company saying, no, we're not allowing that message because it's too political. They'll put up adverts saying vote SNP or vote Labour, but say no to new sex education, that's too political for them, apparently. I mean, get your head around that. So that's a little obstacle. I'm sure that will be overcome one way or another. But at some point within the next few weeks, we're hoping to see this £10,000 spent on an advertising campaign. I mean, the intention is that it's going to be in Glasgow and Edinburgh. I think it will be a media story. While it's running, we'll have a protest at the Parliament, maybe deliver some teddies individually to some MSPs, some key government ministers with a message from us. We're also going to have an indoor rally in Glasgow as well. So that's all going to happen, but that the dates depend on when the advertising campaign gets up and running. I think it is going to be a significant media story in Scotland, I think around the world as well. So that's something to look forward to, but there's a couple of obstacles to overcome before we quite get there. Right, so that's Glasgow cabbie. That's coming on nicely. I said I'd tell you a story about when I was on holiday. I'll do that now. So part of my holiday, do comment, by the way. I'm looking forward to seeing the familiar names, maybe some new ones. I can interact with the comments as we go through tonight. So as part of my holiday, I went with my youngest son and a couple of friends to Belgium to watch a motor race at Spa, a 24-hour motor race. And we camped at the circuit. So we set up our tent on the first night. And then a group of Dutch people set up their tent very near to us. And they came with a speaker like the size of a fridge, a full-size fridge, this enormous, great big speaker. And they were sort of partying away through the evening. Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure everyone in the campsite particularly wanted to share their music. Okay, whatever. But then kept going until after 1 o'clock in the morning. Absolutely blasting music out in the middle of the campsite after 1 o'clock in the morning. So eventually I thought, I've had enough. I'm going to go and say something. So right, if I want to get them to turn it down or whatever, probably the best tactic would be to go over and say, hey guys, I can understand you're trying to have a party. I don't want to spoil your fun, but if you could just turn it down a bit now, because it is after 1 o'clock, that'd be really great. Although that would probably be the best tactic for attaining the results. But then I thought of a conversation I'd had a few months ago now. It was probably going on a year ago, actually. It was a girl who just started at Edinburgh University in her first year. And she said she was being kept awake till after 3 a.m. every night in the hall of residence by like wild partying in the flat she was in, the flats around her. And she said eventually she got so fed up of it that she went and said to them, you know, I don't want to be a killjoy, but if you wouldn't mind maybe just turning the music down, I'd really appreciate that. And I thought how wrong that situation is. The person who's been perfectly reasonable is having to be really sort of apologetic and timid, maybe a bit worried what's going to happen. Whereas the people who are completely in the wrong are made to feel like they're the ones that are in the right, and the other people have been a bit unreasonable. Asked them. So I thought, I'm not going to go over and say, if you wouldn't mind, So I just went over and said, it's after 1 o'clock. You need to turn that off. And he said, we've got a right to have a party, haven't we? I said, no, not after 1 in the morning in the middle of a campsite. You need to turn it off. And he came right up to me, put his nose right up to me. It looks a bit like Phil Tanzer, actually. He was a not very nice version of Phil Tanzer, but he looked like Phil Tanzer. Anyway, so we sort of had a little bit of an argument, and eventually I went off and tried to get to sleep again. Apparently they did maybe turn it down a little bit. I'm not sure. Then the next morning, I was up at about 8 o'clock. I thought they're probably having a good old sleep. So I went over and woke them up deliberately in the mornings. They just went outside their tent and said, good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure you're awake after you spoiled our night last night. So why do I tell that story? The reason I tell that story is that there must have been hundreds of people on that campsite who've been lying in their tents thinking, this is so annoying. They're so unreasonable. This is outrageous. Thumping music away till 20 past 1 in the morning. And yet, why was there not a queue of people? Why were they not surrounded by a crowd of people saying, look, what's going on here? If there had been a crowd of people, that Dutch group would have got the impression of, oh, wow, right, okay, yeah, well, let's turn it down. But because it's just one person, they're probably thinking, that this guy's a bit extreme. He's a bit crazy. He's a bit unreasonable, wanting the music to go down at 20 past 1 in the middle of a campsite. And I thought that's a little parable of our time, isn't it? How many people lie in their tents thinking, that's completely wrong. I'm really annoyed about this. It's completely unreasonable what they're doing. But, I'm not going to go out and confront them. I don't know how that will go. I'll leave that to someone else to go out and confront them. So I guess carrying through the parable, I suppose my encouragement to everyone would be the sort of people who say, right, I'm going to get out of my tent and I'm going to go and do something about this. I'm going to challenge it myself. I'm not going to wait until someone else says, I'm going to go and challenge it myself. So that was, a little parable from the campsite in Belgium. Right, do throw comments in. Let's have a look. Right. Right, we've got a few visitors this evening, I see. All right, got a few sort of unpleasant characters. Oh, that's fine. Well, I'll stick around and hear what I've got to say, and maybe might change your mind about a few things. And something else I was going to. Right, Dominic, you've just been offensive. I mean, why would you come on and just be downright offensive? I mean, what sort of person are you? Why do you think that's an okay thing to do? I mean, do you really think anyone's going to think, right, yeah, he's definitely wrong because Dominic Scullion comes on and calls him names? That means he must be wrong, mustn't it? That means he must be a bad person because Dominic Scullion, who's shown himself to be really offensive and horrible, he must be the one who's in the right. So, Dominic, what are you doing? Anyway, we'll give you a block for now. Obviously, the troll's out tonight. Indeed, right. Let's. I'll engage with some of the comments. If some of these people put in the negative comments on, if any of them want to put anything sensible on, I'm very happy to engage with that. Let me just try and take Anne's comment off. Where is it? I can't find it. That's strange. Okay, I'll put that one on and then take that one off. Right, okay, we can come to those in a minute. Right, what else have I been hearing about, been thinking about? Well, I was speaking to a lawyer the other day. Now, if anyone's going to put two and two together, this wasn't a lawyer I was dealing with a legal case that I'm working with a lawyer on at the moment. This is a different lawyer, just chatting. And they were saying that really, in their experience, when it comes to the police, if you're not reporting domestic abuse, sexual assault, or a hate crime, your chance of getting the police interested are not necessarily very high. For example, if you've just been punched then not really very high up the police's priority. It was the view of this lawyer that the police's priorities are extremely politicized, and are saying it is domestic violence, sexual abuse, and hate crime that is their priority. And they're all things with significant political implications. They're priorities that reflect the sort of feminist identity politics sort of mindset of the Scottish government. And when that infects the priorities of the police force, I think we've got quite a serious problem. Now, the other thing this lawyer was saying, I need to look into this more, is that now when people find themselves defending a charge of sexual assault, which is quite common in the courts, that there are now rules that make it very difficult for them to present the best case in their defense that they could, because there's often key evidence that they're not allowed to present in court. And the view is that this is preventing them from receiving a fair trial. Now, I know there are plenty of people who are charged with sexual assault who are guilty and deserve all they get, and maybe quite a bit more as well. But in this situation with this system, again, it's been politically driven. We want more convictions for sexual assault. And when you start to try to interfere with the justice system in order to meet an artificial target, then it ceases to become a justice system and becomes a sort of political manifestation system that treats people unfairly. And what I was hearing from this lawyer is that that's the way things have gone in Scotland. So that's something I would like to look into very much more in the future. Right, I've got let's say people who are sort of hostile, do put something sensible on, some sort of sensible point, and I will engage with it, and we can discuss. But let's say, right, Charles, nice to see you there. Now, I came across another policy idea just a couple of days ago. I thought it was quite interesting. It's from another party, a minor party, but is this a policy worth stealing from them? Let's see what you think. Now, the idea was that with the NHS, if you go beyond a certain waiting time, whether that's for a GP's appointment or for a hospital appointment or surgery or seeing a consultant, whatever, so you have some sort of cutoff time. If it gets to that cutoff time and the NHS has not been able to provide that service, then instead you're given a voucher for the value of that service that you can then go and use with private healthcare. Now, there's different ways that could work. It could be that the voucher just covers the cost of the private healthcare, or it could be that the voucher is for what it would have cost with the NHS, and then you can pay a little bit more if you want to, pay the top up for it to be done through private healthcare. Now, certainly the latter, I found it hard to see a problem with that, hard to see a downside to it, because that's improving the efficiency of the NHS without costing any more money. That's the version where you just give what it would have cost the NHS. The other version, well, the advantage of it is it makes the system very fair, so that people are not going to suffer unreasonable delays, but that is going to cost more money. So I thought that was something worth exploring. It would need looking into quite a bit more. So tell me what you think about that. So if say, let's say you're waiting for some surgery, then you'd set a time period. The time period might be, say, I don't know, 6 months or 3 months or whatever you decide is reasonable. So let's say it gets to 6 months and the NHS have not been able to do it, or you haven't been able to see the consultant, then you get a voucher that says, we're really sorry, we haven't been able to provide the service to you. Here's a voucher that you can take to a private hospital or a private medical practice, and you can spend this voucher to have the same treatment or the same service, the same consultation there. And that's really interesting. I think that's worth looking at. I think it's worth looking at. Charles, they're saying, yeah, paying the top up seems okay. I mean, as long as it's reasonable. If it's going to be, extortionately expensive, then there might be a problem. But if it's quite a moderate amount, now you might say, what about people who can't afford it? People who can't afford it are still helped by the system because it takes loads off the NHS. So they're still helped by the system, whether they actually use it or not. So that was a very interesting thing that I think we will look at. Still waiting for any sensible comments from our less positive commenters. Say any sort of intelligent comment, I will respond to it. But it seems like I'm drawing a blank, inviting an intelligent comment. But well, let's not give up hope. Let's see Let's see what we find coming on. All right, okay. What have we got from Emma? Right, hello, Emma. Right, you're responding to Anne. Don't you find comparing the Holocaust to abortion offensive? I would say I certainly don't, because it's comparing one sort of state-sponsored mass killing with another sort of state-sponsored mass killing. So it's a pretty close parallel, isn't it? It's a fairly close, pretty close parallel. So should they be compared? Yeah, because that's fundamentally, there are great similarities. Now, the thing with comparing things, sometimes this gets a bit silly in the media. Like, if I said, I think I'm a better person than Hitler, the headline in the Daily Record tomorrow could be, Richard Lucas compares himself to Hitler. Okay. Did I compare myself to Hitler? Yes. I said, I think I'm a better person than Hitler. I made a comparison. But they report it as though you're saying, I am the same as. So comparing is taken to mean equating, which it doesn't make any sense at all. But you'll see that repeatedly in the media. If the media want to tar someone and make out they've said something really outrageous, they'll say they compared two things as though they said the two things are the same. But you didn't. In comparing them, you're often pointing out a difference between them. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. If you want to come back on that, let's see. Right, let's see. Right, Kirsten, hello. Close parallel. Can you hear what you're saying? Yes. If you want to challenge what I'm saying, you need to present an argument. You need to point out the relevant difference. I'm saying the relevant parallel between the Holocaust and abortion is its state-sponsored mass killing. Okay, that's the parallel. If you want to point out the difference that I'm missing, then you need to explain that to me, and then I can respond to that, and we can move the discussion forward. Concerned that the voucher system rely on the very same clinicians. There is that fear, isn't there? Because often, because some private medicine takes place within NHS facilities, doesn't it? So I guess if they're doing that, that doesn't actually help, probably. But if there are independent hospitals that are employing their own staff, then I think that possibly could be a way forward. Right, let's so we're here. Right, David. So David, what sort of repercussions should people promoting transgenderism face? Repercussions, I think they should face severe disturbance of their conscience, for a start. They should feel within themselves that they're sacrificing the well-being of children on the altar of a passing political, ideological fashion. So I think they should feel guilt. Their conscience should be disturbed. I mean, beyond that, as far as the state's concerned, I believe transgender ideology just needs removing from all aspects of the state. All aspects of the state that are operating as though transgender ideology is true need to change and operate as if transgender ideology is false. Okay, now that's not to say people don't experience difficulties, gender dysphoria, as I would call it, and they might need support. But the ideology of transgenderism, transsexualism is not true, so it just needs removing from public life. Now, it would still circulate very strongly on the internet. Would that be a danger to young people, a danger to children? It certainly would. Would it be a good idea to try and censor that on the internet? I'm not sure that would be a good thing to try. I'm not sure it would be feasible. But the education system should be trying to counter that. So it should be saying to young people, look, there's a dangerous message out there, but let's just get back to basics and teach the facts about this. This is what's best for you. This is the healthiest way forward for you. So I'm not particularly interested in some sort of consequences or punishment for people who are promoting this, but it just needs removing from public life. That's my view. Right, I've got lots of comments coming in thick and fast. That's what we like. Right. So, right, we can see what sort of person you are from your little icon there. I mean, how do you think that reflects on you? They're just offensive and vulgar. I mean, what sort of person are you? If you present yourself like that, I mean, you may as well just put a bracket after your name and say obnoxious, aggressive, offensive person. But it's up to you. Yeah, if that's the way you want to present yourself. Right, it's not state-sponsored. So when the Scottish government tells the Scottish NHS to spend taxpayers' money providing abortions, you regard that as not state-sponsored. You'll need to explain to me how that's not state-sponsored. Yeah, you need to explain, right? It is an individual choice. Yes, it is a service that people opt to partake of as an individual choice, but the service is provided by the state. So that's that. Yeah, Gerard, quite right. Spot on, sir. Yeah, just if the NHS pays for it. Right, rainbow flag. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who would support the values of the rainbow flag would not support your sort of obnoxious, aggressive, vulgar approach to it, Nicole. Anyway, let's move on. Who else have we got? Surely women have a choice whether to have an abortion. Now, you can argue that people have a choice to do lots of things. The question is whether they should have a choice, because what do those choices involve? If the choice involves the ending of an innocent human life, I don't regard that as a valid choice. That choice shouldn't be open to people in a civilized society, in the same way that ending any other human life isn't a choice open to us in our society. It's illegal. And so I believe that abortion should be illegal for the same reason. And quite right. Yeah, Charles, just saying there about the damage of transgenderism. The evidence just mounts up and mounts up, but it's not driven by evidence, it's driven by ideology. There's been significant rolling back on it in England. I mean, the Conservative government allowed the whole thing to get to the point where it was, and they're now just pulling back from it a little bit, but not completely. Not completely. I mean, this ideology still has a huge grip within the medical profession, within education, and lots of other areas of government as well in England under the Conservative government. But there has been a slight pulling back in terms of the medical approach to children. But that's the Conservatives. They just drag their feet a little bit about the current issue. But overall, the drift is in the same direction. And they never say, whoa, how did we end up here? We need to go back a few steps. It went wrong here. And let's straighten this out. And where this went wrong is 2004, when the Gender Recognition Act was passed, saying that people can change sex, when in fact, actually in truth, they can't. But the law says that they can. That went through in 2004, UK legislation, and that was mistaken. I think we need to go back to there, repeal that legislation, and then let's start from scratch again on this issue. Right. There are many reasons why women may choose to have an abortion. There certainly are. Yes, I think the reasons are not, whatever those reasons are, they don't overwhelm the fact that we're talking about the ending of an innocent human life. What sort of reasons, in other contexts, what sort of reasons justify someone being able to choose to end another human life? We don't normally, we allow that in some very, very specific situations, like, if the police are going to shoot some gunman or something. But generally, the sort of reasons that are given for abortion are not regarded as valid reasons to end a human life. So that's it. But Cindy, I mean, these are sensible comments you're making, so I appreciate that. I'm very happy to keep responding to them. Right. Aren't members of your party offensive and aggressive? I would hope not. Offensive is a very subjective term. I mean, very often when we state our views, people respond by saying, that's outrageous, it's offensive, you're disgusting, you're horrible, you're nasty, whatever. But the question's got to be, is there any objective basis for people saying that? And I would hope that the answer is always no. Aggressive as well, so physically aggressive, certainly not. I mean, aggressive in terms of, I would hope not. I don't think so. Aggressive in terms of putting forward a viewpoint strongly and confidently, if that's classed as aggressive, which some people do class it as that, then I said it's all very subjective. Right, Daniel. All right, Daniel. Daniel will know what he's talking about on this issue. The problem with private providers is that they cherry pick the easy, simple, time-limited cases, leaving the NHS to deal with the complex and long-term. It's difficult to account for that in a flat tariff. Right, I understand that. Yep, that's a good point. If it was a voucher system, though, so I guess you're saying that if there was this sort of voucher system, that private providers would turn down a lot of that business, if you like, they wouldn't see it as profitable. Do you think there might be some cases where it's just, it's a consultation or it's quite a basic, straightforward procedure where they might be able to step in? I'd be interested to hear more, Daniel. That's a good point, but tell me more. Tell me more. Abortion is healthcare. Now, just defining something as healthcare can't settle an argument. Why is it classed as healthcare? Killing a human life, ending an innocent human life, isn't healthcare. Okay, you need to present an argument why that amounts to improving health. I mean, killing doesn't involve improving health. Okay, women will die without it. I think that is just not true. If you look at the statistics related to maternal deaths in countries that have abortion that's allowed and not allowed, I mean, it's a myth that if you ban abortion, that there's just more women are dying as a result. It's not true. It's not true. Abortion itself has its dangers and has its side effects. So it's not true. It's not true. But what is definitely true is unborn children die or killed through it. So that's my response to that. But yeah, thanks, Emma. So if you want to comment again, do bring that back. M. Hunter, I'm an SMP member. Are you? I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, the child dies every time. Quite right. Right. The comments are really flying here. Let's see what else we've got. Individual. Right. Individual choice does not extend to the preborn. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. If you'll explain that again, I will have a go at answering that. Right. A fetus is not a baby. Correct. And a baby is not a toddler. And a toddler is not a teenager. And a teenager is not a middle-aged person. And a middle-aged person is not an old person. So, what's that got to do with whether it's okay to kill them or not? The fact that different stages of life have different names applied to them isn't an argument that their lives are of no value at certain of those stages. So if you want to have a rethink about that and come back again, I'd be very happy to answer. Right, so Alex, the problem with health service in Scotland is the fact that 43% of doctors are part-time. And a large reason for that is I think the majority of doctors now are female. And generally women tend to work less. In other words, they work less hours through their working career, partly through having time off for children and also partly preferring part-time work. Now, that's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? Now, in Pakistan, they faced exactly the same problem. I read about this. It was quite a few years ago now. They had the same problem in Pakistan. In Pakistan, they just had open application for their medical schools. They just took the best pupils. And generally, they ended up being majority female. The medical profession in Pakistan was majority female. But the money they were spending on training doctors, they weren't getting the value they wanted from it because a lot of these, particularly female doctors, were not working as many hours as they might have done. So for Pakistan, not the wealthiest of countries, then there was a real problem for them that they weren't getting the return on their investment in training doctors that they needed in order to be able to run their health service. And I understand that as a result of that, they capped the number of female applicants that were allowed. I don't know if they capped it at 50%, which might have been a bit more defensible. If they capped it at a lower figure, you're in tricky territory there, aren't you? I mean, what's the solution to this? I'm not suggesting for a moment that the solution is you should have some sort of quota or rules or whatever. Approaching this from a gender point of view is not helpful. A way that it could be approached is to say, if you train as a doctor, then you're required to work a certain amount in the NHS for a certain number of years. And if you don't do that, then you're liable to basically to be paying back some of the costs of your training. That seems fair because that's nothing to do with gender. It's just based on people's decisions that they make. Because obviously in training a doctor, that's an investment by the state in order to meet the needs of the state. So if you train as a doctor and then work a day a week, okay, I'm not criticizing that, and it's your decision. If that's what fits with your lifestyle, fine. But from the state's point of view and their investment in your training, then that maybe wasn't such a good investment, and the state needs to look at ways of safeguarding its investment. But a very difficult area. But Alex, an excellent point. I think that's something that the government does need to tackle. I would say, though, the government will not tackle it because it will be seen as an anti-feminist move, or will be seen as an anti-women move. Because whatever measures were taken for the government to protect its investment in training, the measures would fall disproportionately on women. So the government would never dream of even suggesting that the issue should be addressed. Whereas I think maybe it is something that needs to be looked at in the future. I don't know. Right, so Karen, the rainbow always has been a symbol of hope for Christian people. No idea how the rainbow became something other than that. It's interesting, isn't it? The power that some groups have to redefine language, redefine symbols, etc. I mean, in the Bible, the rainbow was a symbol of God withholding his judgment on sin. And some Christians look at that and think, well, that's still, that's quite interesting. Let's just put it that way. Right, Gerard, scientists agree that life begins at conception. Therefore, it's a baby. Life certainly does begin at conception. As far as I'm concerned, that's there's no other points to say where life begins. I mean, a baby, I would say it's an unborn baby. But if someone wants to quibble over the terminology, as I've explained earlier, the terminology used for the different stages of human life, they don't really matter. They don't have any moral import as far as I can say. Right, that makes sense of that one. Right, Christine. Right, if someone was raped and fell pregnant as a result of the rape, you think it's right to continue with the pregnancy, even though the mental health could be destroyed? Right, several things to say to this. The first one is, I'm not an expert on this, but I am aware that there's research that shows that victims of rape, women who become pregnant through rape and keep their baby, tends to have a more positive future on various measures rather than women who've been raped, become pregnant, and have an abortion. I think there is research that indicates that. So very possibly there are some women who might be considering an abortion after becoming pregnant through rape, but actually the future would unfold more positively if they went down a different path than that. It's right to continue with the pregnancy. I think it is right to continue with the pregnancy because a human life, no matter how it was brought into being, has got a value of one human life. So I believe I'm as valuable as anybody else, and anyone else is as valuable as me. So once the new human life, the new one, is conceived, come into existence, has got a value of one human life. Similarly, if someone, after they're born, if they were conceived in rape, and there are quite a few public figures who articulate that they were conceived in rape, and they basically, their message is, look, I'm glad to be here, actually. So I think human lives are equally valuable. So after someone's born, we wouldn't say your life's less valuable because you were conceived in rape. So similarly, before birth as well, I wouldn't say their life was less valuable because it was conceived, he or she was conceived in rape. Now, in terms of Scottish Family Party policy, our policy in this area currently, we might update it soon, is actually sort of deliberately vague. It says we oppose abortion in almost all circumstances, except extreme circumstances. So extreme circumstances could be where there's threat to the life of the mother, very definitely. Would it also include rape? To be honest, I'd be happy to say, well, let's not argue about the case of rape for the time being. Let's leave that one allowed. Let's deal with the other 98%. And when we're dealt with those, let's have a debate about rape. I think that's quite a sensible way forward. But do come back on that. Do come back. Right, Cindy, there are many, many reasons why a woman may choose to have an abortion. Women in Auschwitz had no choice whether to go to the gas chamber. I don't understand the comparison. Okay, well, let's think about those situations. So Auschwitz, you're absolutely right. Obviously, the victims had no choice. In abortion as well, the victims have no choice. Okay, the victim is the unborn child, and they don't have a choice. So that's why I think the parallel holds. But do come back to me. Right, Milton, keep up the good work. Thank you. On abortion, is the Roman Catholic Church a strong enough ally? Well, we don't expect churches to be allies to political parties in any formal sense. Would we like churches to be clear and bold in their proclamation of moral truth in this area? We certainly would. Personally, do I feel churches do that? Overall, my personal view would be most churches basically fail in that regard. They fail in their duty to promote goodness, righteousness, and to challenge evil in society. They're good at doing this when it's not controversial, but when it gets to a controversial issue, they generally don't do it. The Catholic Church does speak out on these issues, though, I have to say. A lot of Catholics say to me they wish it would speak out more strongly, more frequently, but they do speak out, and I think people know where they stand, certainly, on abortion, and that's good. You're a nutter. Okay, I thought we were doing well, Emma. I thought you were offering quite reasonable points. I thought we were having a sensible discussion, but if you've run out of sensible things to say, fair enough. I quite understand that. Yeah, I mean, Charles, good points. Yeah, people accused of being stupid and not compassionate. I mean, being accused of being stupid, well, that's, yeah. But not being compassionate. With abortion in particular, it's just total inversion of the truth, isn't it? We get it thrown at us. You know, you're disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. Shame on you. That's a common thing if you stand in the street at the prayer vigil at the abortion clinics. Shame on you. And I always think, you're really going to have to try harder than that. It just doesn't work. I don't feel any shame at all defending the lives of unborn children. So, yeah, Charles, right with you there. Right, Judith, all right. Do you think if people supporting abortion were required to watch the film Silent Scream, would it make a difference to their thinking? The life does not begin until after birth, and that is painless to the baby being torn limb from limb. That's a very interesting point. I think the use of abortion images and video is very powerful. We're very cautious how we do that. Personally, I'm not comfortable with presenting that to someone when they haven't chosen to see it. So if you've got a really sort of grotesque, gory image, I would think someone needs to know what they're about to see and choose to see it. If they do choose to see it, then I think that's very powerful. Often that can like change someone's mind on the spot. If someone chooses not to see it, then that can be powerful as well, because the person's thinking, I'm choosing to not know the truth. I don't want to see what I'm defending, and surely that has an impact on people's thinking as well. That's going to steer them in a certain direction. So using the images, yes, in our materials, we're going to try and put links on the website, etc., that will enable people, if they want to see some images, then they're there for them to see. Now, some organizations obviously take these images onto the street. Now, I think with abortion, it's such a fundamentally critical moral issue that I think it justifies pretty, bold, dramatic tactics. Let's put it that way. So people who take the images onto the streets, people see them whether they can turn away immediately. People see them whether they want to or not. Personally, I've got reservations about that. Would I say that they shouldn't do it? No. If people want to do that, and they feel that that's what's necessary to awaken people, I say it can change people's minds on the spot, start the conversation, then I'm right behind them. So, right, thanks, Judith. Right. Kate, suction termination. That's got a big comment. I've disappeared. Isn't nice. I've worked in daycare. I watched women walking into the theatre, and every single one was pushed out on a gurney from the theatre, all crying. Babies' limbs torn off, etc. Unpleasant. Maybe we should show young teenagers videos of what happens. It can make them have more responsibility during relationships however, vaccines causing infertility. Now, in terms of education in school, in that regard, certainly we think there should be balanced, at the very least. That would be our demand from where we are, balanced education about abortion. Whereas currently the lesson is, if you find yourself pregnant, you don't want to be, you've got three options: have the baby, adoption, or have an abortion. No discussion about the merits of them, no moral questioning of it. Just, here are your three options. It's like choosing your breakfast, just choose whichever one of them you like, and that's fine. But actually it's not. So I think more realistic education will be valid. In terms of vaccines causing infertility, I'm not convinced of that. Happy to look at evidence, but I'm not convinced of that at the moment. Okay. Right, Emma Hunter, explain to me why it isn't. I'm afraid I've lost the thread of that conversation. If you remind me what you want me to explain why it isn't. Okay, Nicole, the health of the pregnant woman. I'm going to have a full sentence there. I'm not sure what you're saying. Charles is claiming women who've had abortions are twice likely to commit suicide. To be honest, I'd be pretty confident that sort of statistic is true. There's then the question of how much of that is related to the abortion and how much might be related to other factors that have been associated with possibly a chaotic lifestyle, unwise choices in general. So, I'd be very confident it's true. Pinning it down to abortion might be need a bit more information, but maybe the information you're quoting is taking all that into account. It might well be, Charles. It might well be. Right. Hello, Gaza. Right. The Pope is very woke. Check out some of his comments. I wouldn't say for definite the Roman Catholic Church is anti-abortion. Well, the thing with the Catholic Church is its beliefs are laid out on paper in its catechism, and basically they don't change very often. So the Roman Catholic Church is still pro-life, very definitely. But I've heard the current Pope say some pretty bold pro-life things as well. So I know some people have question marks about the Pope and his wider views, but the Roman Catholic Church is very definitely still pro-life. Leroy, hello, Leroy. Right, oh, dear me, right, that's very nice. I won't read a light, it's too embarrassing. Right, get out. Right, thank you very much. Thanks, Leroy. That's very very encouraging. I'm sure you do the same as well, or get involved with the Scottish Family Party. There's lots of opportunities to do the same. Right, let's see. Okay, Emma, etc. You're responding as though I can remember what your last comment was, or which one. If you could put it in a sentence, I can remember the thread of the conversation. I mean, like just saying I'm clutching at straws. I don't know whether the thing is putting there's like tears of laughter at the end of it. You see, that's not really the way sort of intelligent, civilized debate works. That's more like some playground stuff, claiming that like what I'm saying is so stupid it's making you laugh. Because I think probably it's not really. I don't think I'm really being a great comedian here. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. So again, I would urge you just to have a more sort of adult, civilized, respectful, intelligent approach to debating with someone that you disagree with. But right, over to you. Right, comments coming in thick and fast. Right, hello, Fraser. Hope you're doing well. Hope things are going well. Obviously, with you. Right. Now I'm going to disappear behind this comment again. So, right, bye everyone. Right. So reply to Emma. That's because what you said there said, right. Babies have their limbs torn off. That's how they're aborted. Go look up suction termination of pregnancy. All women I saw. Okay, with abortion methods, different methods at different stages of the abortion. Techniques have developed over the years. Most abortions now are what they call medical abortions, which means it's pills. So basically, the unborn child is poisoned. That's what it amounts to is poisoned. Now, I think the torn limb from limb type descriptions are obviously more moving and powerful emotionally, but poisoning as well. I mean, the ultimate important thing is the ending of the human life. That's what's at the heart of it. Right, two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, that's true. I think with regard to abortion, I would guess you're referring to the abortion, to the rape issue there. So I would quite agree with you there. Right, baby should not be punished for the crime of the father. Right, again, I guess you're talking about the rape situation. So yes, I would agree with that. I mean, that's generally a principle, isn't it? We don't hold children responsible for the actions of their parents. I'm just thinking off the top of my head now. I mean, however a child is being produced, I mean, let's say a child's produced by who knows what strange technology or fertility treatments or whatever in the future. It doesn't matter where they've come from. It doesn't matter if someone stole the egg and then did this and there was no consent to it. It doesn't matter how a human life's created in terms of its value. Its value is inherent. It's not contingent on its origin. Okay. Right, comments thick and fast. Let's see. Right, Toby, we'll forgive you for being late. Glad to get back. Right, good to have you here. I'll just mention a bit about our future guests, actually. I forgot that at the beginning. I think next week I'm going to have someone else from the SFP leadership team. The week after, our guest is a Muslim, and is a Muslim from an organization that works with Muslims who are struggling with same-sex attraction. So it's what opposition groups would call conversion therapy. So a Muslim that's engaged in so-called conversion therapy, helping people with same-sex attraction who don't want to go down the sort of homosexual road. So that's going to be fascinating, isn't it? That's 2 weeks' time. So do tune in for that one and next week as well. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I've had this, good point, Charles. I've had this from a few people online recently. They're saying, well, are you going to look after all these unwanted children? Well, no, but people are queuing up to adopt newborn children. There are couples queuing up to adopt unborn children. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. But the facts of the matter don't matter too much sometimes from the other side. In the case of rape, does the rapist have father's rights? That's an interesting question. One would assume not. Would he have father's responsibilities, for example, in terms of paying up? One would hope so. But that's a very interesting question. If you want to do a bit of research and find out, I'd be very interested to hear how that works. Right, Judith, I had 3 children, I assume, and never felt enslaved by it, nor would my husband have wanted to enslave me. I mean, absolutely. I mean, what a bizarre society we live in, that you feel the need to say something like that. But I mean, it is needed. It does need to be said, because the culture being created is like being a mum. It's a cross between being a slave and a prisoner. It's like torture. It's the lowest of the low. It's total failure to have any fulfillment in your life. You're just trapped in this menial, dark labor at home. That's the way it's presented by a lot of feminists, which is absolute bunk. Because most mothers would say it's a really precious, wonderful time, and wouldn't necessarily say they enjoy every minute of it. But overall, there's nothing they would rather be doing than spending time nurturing their own children. So, right, thank you, Judith. Like choosing breakfast, it's still a choice. Yeah, there's no need to respond to that, I don't think. Why isn't abortion healthcare? Because healthcare promotes health. It's care given to people in order to improve their health or to protect their health. Killing doesn't improve health or protect health. Therefore, abortion isn't healthcare. Okay. Right, well, time is flying. I've got lots more things on my list to mention. I'll maybe mention a couple in a minute. Women and children have been enslaved by men since time began. We are still fighting for equal rights. Do women and children have free will? Right, let's go from the beginning. Women and children have been enslaved by men since time began. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. That's not to say that there might be phases in history or parts of the world where there are inequalities that are significant and are wrong. But the idea that women and children have been enslaved by men. So all fathers throughout history have enslaved their children. Really? Really? I mean, all husbands enslave their wives. No. I mean, are you serious? Are you serious about that? Do women and children have free will? Of course they do. They're humans. Human beings have the capacity to make independent choices, free will, which is a supernatural thing in my view, an amazing thing that can't be accounted for by science, but I believe that we do have free will, yes. And obviously, women and children and men. Okay, let's right. Hello. One well-known promoter said that he sees it as contributing to population reduction. Oh, we're back on the on the vaccine. Right. I believe that there are people who see that one of the ways of solving the world's problems is reducing its population, particularly in Africa, for example. So the sort of Bill Gates school of thought of international development is right. Too many people, lots of problems. We'd be better off having less people, and then there wouldn't be as many problems. And so they've pursued policies that reflect that assumption. So the policies are very pro-contraception. People have mixed views about that, and very pro-abortion as well. Now, Family Party were completely against that. So as an international development strategy, killing unborn children is not right. And we very definitely believe that. But the British government, the conservative British government, puts huge pressure on poor countries to implement abortion. Otherwise, they don't get the cash. They don't get the development aid that they would otherwise receive from the UK government, which is utterly disgraceful. And that's the conservative UK government. Spend a lot of time in Scotland saying how terrible the SNP is, quite understandably, but that's how the conservative government acts on the world stage. Now, in terms of population, but the projection now is the world population is going to start declining within a few decades, and that's going to be pretty dramatic. Even the countries we normally associate with high fertility rates, their fertility rates are plummeting, and the world population is going to flatten out, then go down. Declining population presents some pretty severe difficulties, and I mean, basically, global warming, climate change is the thing we hear about again and again and again. But declining population is a very significant challenge coming down the line to us. It appears at the moment on current projections, but it's been completely ignored by the political establishment. Right, where are we? 12% drop. Right, Gaza, so it's saying a 12% drop in what? Births this year. Okay, I'd be interested in seeing more evidence of that. I was seeing recently that the excess deaths, this is from England and Wales, excess deaths are pretty high at the moment, particularly from heart problems. Now, I'm sure lots of people who are very skeptical about that injection you get for COVID will be saying that this seems to be evidence that is causing the problem. I would need, I'm not saying that's not the case, but it would need a lot of careful evidence to convince me that it was the case, because medical statistics is quite a complicated thing. And I've got a rough understanding of how much you need to know and what sort of data you need in order to draw that sort of conclusion. And I'm not aware of it at the moment. That's all I'm saying. But I'm open-minded. Is abortion a medical miscarriage? I'm not sure it's a very helpful question to try and, I would say no, because a miscarriage is something that happens when the pregnancy doesn't follow through. The unborn child basically sadly dies instead of being born. So no, I think miscarriage is a different. I wouldn't use miscarriage doesn't cover abortions. I would say because abortion is deliberate. That's a different thing. Right. Okay, babies feeling pain. Yeah. There's a lot of evidence about that. Again, to me, it's not something I particularly focus on because, as far as I'm concerned, the fundamental thing is ending innocent human life. So, for example, we talked about the Holocaust a little bit earlier on. I think this is a genuinely interesting question. If you think about the Holocaust, what was most horrifying? Now, the way people were treated, dehumanized, terrified, starved, bullied, deprived of family contact. I mean, all those things really appalling. But the real core of the matter, the worst thing was the killing. The worst thing was the killing. Now, if we approach issues through empathy, how would it have felt to be those people? That must have been awful going through that experience. That's absolutely true. That's very helpful. That will help us to appreciate how bad the mistreatment of, for example, the Jews in the Holocaust was. That will help us with that. But what it won't help us with is acknowledging the moral gravity of the mass killing, because you don't empathize with someone dying, because obviously, that doesn't make sense. So if someone's too focused on empathy, then they can fail to appreciate, say, the moral gravity of killing. Whereas I think it's really important to maintain that. So with the Holocaust, the worst aspect was that people were killed. Another really important, very serious aspect is the way that people were mistreated. But the ultimate evil was people being killed. Right. All right. Is LGBT rooted in pedophilia? I would say no. I don't think that's the case. How do the statistics pan out? What proportion of people of different sexual orientations are involved in some sort of child abuse or other sorts of sexual abuse? Well, the statistics can speak to themselves. I believe there are some significant differences between groups, but I would not agree with the statement that you've made there. Right, Joe. So you think it's all right for men in our society to rape women, and for those women just to have the children they don't want to? So you really think it's all right for men in our society to rape women? Yeah, that's exactly what I've been saying, isn't it? Not. I mean, to be honest, Joe, I'm not even going to respond to anymore, because it's so ridiculous to even suggest that I've said anything remotely like that. It's just bizarre. I don't know what you're thinking. So I'll leave that one there. Right. Okay, and what a wonderful world it would be if women didn't have to have abortions. If all babies were welcomed by society, it's normal for disabled babies to be miscarried. Some disabled children go through hell as well as their families caring for them. Some disabled children go through hell. Yeah, some other children go through hell. Some adults go through hell. They have really, really difficult experiences in life. But our solution to that is not normally to say, okay, let's kill them then. Okay. In terms of families caring for them, if families find themselves with the additional challenge of looking after a disabled child, that's really difficult for them. And I admire the sacrifices they make and the compassion that they show to fulfill their duty as a parent to their child in that very difficult circumstances. So yeah, and the solution to that isn't to kill the child. You might think that's a controversial thing to say. I think it's an obvious moral truth. Right. Oh, that's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Let's just see if we've got a last question. Never seen so many comments. That's a good one. Magpies have more protection than unborn human children. That's referring to wildlife laws. as suggested. In other words, killing a magpie is illegal, but killing unborn human children is, well, the state will provide the service for you and will do it. Right, time has flown by. Thank you for your company this evening. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for all of your comments. That was great. So next week, I'll tell you what other issues I had here to talk about. I'll talk about them next week, probably. I was going to talk about adultery and abuse in relationships. So, for example, if let's say a man is serially adulterous within a marriage, so he has an affair one after another, and eventually the woman slaps him. So what could happen then is the woman gets convicted for domestic abuse, and the man, well, he hasn't committed any crimes. Now, someone brought up that point to me. It's related to the Ryan Giggs case, which I haven't followed closely. But I just thought that was an interesting question. I'm not answering it. I'm not saying I've got an answer. I just thought it was an interesting question. Something to talk about. I was going to talk about the strikes and the cost of living crisis. I'll maybe do that in a video in the meantime. I was going to talk about the domestic abuse register that the Scottish Conservative Party is proposing. Got some reservations about that. I was also going to talk about Russia. I read a huge, big, thick book about the history of Russia over the summer, and I was just going to talk about that a little bit, obviously as backgrounds to the current war in the Ukraine. But I'll save some of those till next week. I'll have some more along as well. So thanks for joining me tonight, and look forward to seeing you next week. Good night.